This podcast is a member of the Place to Be Nation family. Visit us at placetobenation.com, the only place to be in your pop culture world.
Hard-Traveling Fanboys, 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 Hard-Traveling Fanboys.
Welcome once again, ladies, gentlemen, children of all ages, to your friends in the L-shaped studio, Ho-Ho Loon Plaza, Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada, the Hard-Traveling Fanboys. I am Greg Phillips. With me on this journey through life is my good friend Nick Duke, and you know, Nick?
Yeah?
We have to show up every week at the studio here, fly all the way to Vancouver, do this podcast every single week for our listeners, and that's not fair.
That's not fair. Oh, I'm listening to a podcast and they keep using a running inside joke that I don't get or find funny. That's not fair.
Well, quite frankly, Nick, I would suggest that for many of our listeners out there, yes, not all of our listeners, certainly, but for some of them out there, for some of our listeners out there in the world, quite frankly, for some of them, that notwithstanding, life isn't fair.
Go ahead.
Because when it comes to some of you, not all of you, granted, but when it comes to some of you, life sucks, and then you die.
Oh, God. If you're already tired of hearing us say that's not fair or life sucks and then you die, I would just go ahead and turn the podcast off at this point.
Yes. Especially that's not fair.
Yes, it's coming a lot. So
you may not even expect it when it's coming, but it's coming.
It may not make sense when it's coming. We may just work it in at times where there's nothing we're actually complaining about. But that's just what we're going to do. And if you're wondering what we're talking about, go to my Twitter account where I tweeted out my issues about purchasing Avengers Endgame tickets earlier this week, and find the Vince McMahon promo I linked from YouTube. It is kiss his fingers. You know, it's that good.
It's delightful. It may be, Nick, the greatest speech in American history.
Yeah, it's certainly better than the Gettysburg Address. I don't even know what else would be up there.
Roosevelt on perhaps on D-Day. I don't know. You know.
Yeah, Roosevelt on D-Day. Yep.
But the
Damn it.
His Twitter account, by the way, is at NickDuke87. I am at GPhillips8652.
I am riddled with polio and wheelchair bound, and that's not fair.
You know, I was halfway expecting you to go to a theater joke there. Well, but anyway,
you're the one who brought up Roosevelt.
I did bring up Roosevelt. You're right. And one other thing I'm bringing up is the fact that we are kicking off a brand new theme month.
Yeah, we got a string of these coming up back to back to back, kind of.
That's right. And so last month we had Captain Marvel month, kicking off Marvel's release of Captain Marvel. And this month we've got another Captain Marvel month, Nick, but of a different kind.
We do. Technically we're calling it SHAZAM Month, but we hesitate to say that out loud for fear of angering former denizens of Twitter, or of Twitter.com, as the cool kids say.
Yes, Twitter.com. And yes, we are doing SHAZAM Month here at the Hard-Traveling Fanboys, and much to the chagrin of many people who might say that that's not fair, we are not dedicating the entire month to Beyonce's character from Goldmember. Now that I will give you a complimentary Shazam, but we're not here to talk about that character right now. We're here to talk about.
Nor are we dedicating the entire month to Gomer Pyle.
Shazam!
My lord, I didn't know you had a Gomer Pyle impression in your back pocket.
You never know what I might pull out of my back pocket. Wait a minute. No, we are here to dedicate an entire month to DC's Big Red Cheese. That's right. The original Captain Marvel, currently known as Shazam, is what we're dedicating this month to, because DC and Warner Brothers are getting ready to release nationwide this weekend, in fact, the movie Shazam. And we figured, we're excited for this movie. We figured that this would be a great time for both of us to explore a character that neither of us are terribly familiar with in terms of we have familiarity with Captain Marvel or Shazam primarily through DC crossover events, I think, and through cartoons and things like that. But we've never really read solo Captain Marvel comics that much. And so, much like last month with Marvel's Captain Marvel, we're kind of going to go a little bit of a crash course on learning about this character and also talk about the movie, which we'll plan to see hopefully this weekend. So, all that being said, what we're starting out with is a book that I actually have read before. We are going to start the month out with a Longbook Hunters episode dedicated to our review of a book called called Shazam, The Monster Society of Evil. And this came out in 2009 and is by writer and artist Jeff Smith. Jeff Smith's name might be known to comic book fans for his work on an original creation called Bone, which is a very unique style that's been going on for many, many, many years, multiple volumes. And not to be confused with Winter's Bone.
Winter's Bone. Yeah.
Now, I know what some of you out there are saying right now, some of you listeners. You're saying, I've never even heard of this character, Bone. I've never read about Bone. I've never read a Jeff Smith comic in my life, and that's not fair. Well, quite frankly, I'd suggest that for those of you out there thinking that, life isn't fair. And the good news is you can go on Amazon.com right now.
And you have a very David Sunday-like pronunciation of .com. Amazon.com, like it's one word.
And you can pick up this book for the low price of $45.42.
Isn't it also on DC Universe, though? Or is it not?
I don't know if it is. It might be now.
No, we didn't even look on DC Universe for it. We both read it through the Hoopla digital app, through the Columbus or the Chattahoochee Valley Public Library, which is where
way down yonder at the Chattahoochee Public Library. Mm-hmm. And you can also get it on Kindle Unlimited for $0.
Oh, there you go. Kindle Unlimited, yes. Good point. But the point being, there are ways to read the book without having to pay $46, folks.
Correct. And so this book was actually written and drawn by the aforementioned Jeff Smith. Mm-hmm. I have never read Bone. I'd never even heard of Bone when I got this book, but it's well known apparently in circles, or squares even. So I read this when it came out because I worked at a radio station at the time and got a free review copy sent to me, sent to the radio station by DC Comics, and read it then and absolutely fell in love with it, thought it was great. And then I put the book on my shelf for many years and haven't read it in some time until getting ready to do this podcast and had a chance to reread it. So, Nick, let's start out with you. Before we even delve into the book, let's set up Captain Marvel month, or Shazam month. What is your familiarity with Shazam as a character? How did you first encounter him? And what has been your impression of the character over the years through the various versions that you've experienced?
God, let's see. Probably, I had always heard of the character, but never really, was never really exposed to him to a great deal until Justice League Unlimited. I remember him being involved in that and having a small role to play there. I remember him, of course, appearing a few years back on Young Justice. He has been more predominantly featured alongside the Justice League in the DC animated universe they're doing currently, which we will be taking a look at later in the month. He has also, Jeff Johns did a series of backups in his Justice League title during the New 52 that features Shazam. So, that's kind of my predominant exposure. Never really seen any of the television show, which I misspoke. We're actually looking at that, not the DC animated universe.
Right.
I had forgotten about our schedule change. But it's, in terms of classic Captain Marvel stuff, nothing. I know very little outside of the very basic concept. Oh, and his excellent usage in Kingdom Come, probably my most notable inclusion of Captain Marvel in something.
Yeah, your story is very similar to mine. Growing up, I didn't really experience Captain Marvel in any of the books that I was reading in DC. He didn't really deal with Batman at all. Obviously, they're diametric opposites. He really didn't cross over in Superman in the time that I was reading Superman, and so probably I read advertisements for the Power of Shazam ongoing that Jerry Ordway did back in the 90s when it was happening, but I never read it. And so my first real-time experiencing him probably was Justice League Unlimited. Mm-hmm. And particularly the episode where he has that great throwdown with Superman, which is one of the best episodes of the show, in my opinion. And I always have liked the character since then. I really liked the idea of a boy who, unbeknownst to everyone else, is this adult superhero and can kind of switch places and become this larger-than-life superhero that nobody else knows is secretly a boy. Sort of like Big if it were a superhero story. I really especially like that aspect of it. And since then, I've come to read stories with the more traditional version, which the original version, which was that, and one that you've experienced on the Marvel Age podcast with Captain Marvel and Rick Jones, where Billy and Shazam would actually literally trade physical places, and there were two distinct entities. Mm-hmm. I came to read that in some versions of the story as well. But I read them over the years, primarily in some of those Jeff Johns backups. I've never read the entire thing. I read a few, one-shots here and there. But this book here is actually the most I've ever read of Captain Marvel or Shazam as a character. Now, I also experienced him through other media. I saw the excellent DC animated movie Superman, Shazam, The Return of Black Adam, which is kind of a little short film, basically. It's like 25 minutes, something like that. But it's really good, and I liked that. I liked his usage in Young Justice, as you mentioned. And also, let's not forget about the video game Injustice.
Ah, yes.
Where he features prominently. And enjoyed him in that as well. So that was pretty much the extent of my exposure to the character over the years. And I've always appreciated him and appreciated his supporting cast and the concept of this character. Such a kid-friendly concept, and sometimes I think that's difficult to do in modern comics, where we're so cynical and jaded and expecting mature takes on our comics. And Shazam has always felt to me like a character that, yeah, you can do that with him, but he's honestly more fitted for a target audience that relates to Billy Batson. So, with that being said, Jeff Smith's Shazam is it takes place outside of DC continuity. There's no ties to any existing events. This is restarting from scratch, kind of going back to the basics of the Shazam mythos. And so Jeff Smith starts us at the very beginning with Billy Batson as a homeless orphan who is just kind of barely getting by, surviving on the streets. And
that's not fair.
And that's not fair. My parents are dead, and I'm living in a shack by myself. That's not fair. These other homeless bums come and kick me and abuse me, and they're adults, and that's not fair. I go to try to bring things to my homeless friend at the park because he can't go into the city to get them for himself, and that's not fair. That's what Billy Batson is very much the target audience for Vince McMahon's Life Sucks promo.
Yes.
And he doesn't have a very good life, folks. He's just barely skating by, and lives in this abandoned building, gets picked on by these adult thugs that come in and kick him and punch him and take his money and all that stuff. And he has a friend at the park. This is one of the many great like modernization aspects that Jeff Smith brings to this is the very dated character of Talkie Tawny, is reimagined here in a different way than you may have realized him in the past. He's I believe it is an Iskrit is I think the word that is used, which is like this Aborigine spirit that can shapeshift, but often takes the form of a feline, in this case a tiger. But when we first meet him, he's in human form and forms a relationship with Billy that sort of leads to Billy's connection to the wizard. In this case, Billy has to prove himself to be worthy of the powers of Shazam, that he has a good heart and a good spirit, even though he's a little rough around the edges. And that's what we see here in this take. The wizard is pretty in step with all the other versions of the wizard that we've seen. The subway tunnel, which is a classic recurring motif in all Shazam origin stories. The Rock of Eternity, which is really well rendered here in terms of creating this almost linchpin moment at the dawn of history, where one thing I thought this story did really well is make Shazam feel more important than he's ever felt in the mainstream DC continuity to me, because it gave the Rock of Eternity this import and this level of this is sort of the source of all things kind of thing that really made the whole story feel big and important. And you got Billy's sense of wonder that he's learning all of this crazy stuff for the first time. And we first meet Captain Marvel as kind of a separate entity from Billy, and ultimately they're combined into one, and they sort of take on each other's personalities as the book progresses. And I thought that was really well done as well. And there's so many aspects of this that are kind of like modernizing, but also remaining true to sort of that golden age fun of Captain Marvel comics. One of them is the reimagining of Dr. Savannah, who is one of Shazam's biggest villains, as this sort of, how did you put it, Nick?
He looked kind of like Ross Perot and Odin Kincannon from Preacher.
Mm-hmm. Wrapped up into one. Massive overbite, giant ears, giant bald head on this little tiny body. And he's actually a government bureaucrat in this book. He's like this. He's this rich scientist.
He's the Attorney General, yes.
Who runs for and becomes Attorney General in the beginning of the book.
I don't think you can run for Attorney General.
Well, is nominated for Attorney General. Runs, you know what I meant. You don't run for Attorney General, obviously. But he was nominated for Attorney General and named Attorney General.
Nick called me out on something. That's not fair.
It's not fair. Somebody made a very tiny error in what they were saying, and that's not fair. So Alex Ross does the intro to this book, and I think that's appropriate because if you've ever read or seen anything that Alex Ross has drawn or written, for that matter, it's a very it makes you feel like you're reading something from the Silver Age. You know, there's something from the I guess dawn of comics, and that's sort of what this made me feel like
it's
a modernized.
It's maybe somewhat controversial to say, given how good the book actually is, but the foreword may be the best thing in the book. Not because, like I said, the story that follows it isn't good, but because Alex Ross does such an expert job of explaining why this character can still be relevant, and particularly why the approach that Jeff Smith takes is one that needs to be taken not just in this book, but probably needs to be taken more often in modern comics across the board.
Yes, 100%. It really delves into what makes this character tick and what makes the variety in comics so important. Because there's room in adult, mature comics for a character like Shazam. And it's finding out a way to make that work. And I think Jeff Smith does that brilliantly with this story. So the basic premise of this is kind of retelling a classic Shazam story of Mr. Mind and the Monster Society of Evil, but taking out all of the terrible racist elements from its past and putting it in a modern, fun context that hopefully will capture any age audience's imagination the same way that those Golden Age Captain Marvel comics did. Because one thing that we'll probably talk about throughout this month is there was a time when Captain Marvel was the most popular comic book character in America. When his comic book was outselling even Superman at one point in the 40s. So this is a character that connected on some level, a very creative character, great costume design that has lasted through the ages. So Jeff Smith doesn't tinker too much with the looks of these characters. He draws a very young-looking Billy Batson, a very young-looking Mary Batson, who you meet later. But really, everybody sort of looks, except for the kids who look like modern kids, everybody when they're in costume and when Tawny is in tiger form, they kind of look like their traditional selves. Although Tawny is more of a traditional tiger than an upright tiger. But, Mr. Mind is this tiny little worm that I remember the first time I read this, Nick, I didn't know what Mr. Mind was. So I was reading this book and all of a sudden I'm expecting Mr. Mind to be this big, entity or something, and then it's this little tiny worm, and I thought that was so funny and against type. But yeah, so what did you make of how this book builds its characters? Particularly, the most important character is Billy Batson. Mm-hmm. If he doesn't work, the whole book doesn't work. So, what did you think of Billy in this one, and the way that Smith sort of builds his protagonist?
Well, right off the bat, it's interesting because most other incarnations of Shazam I've encountered are ones where Billy's personality and Captain Marvel's personality are one and the same. It's essentially transporting Billy Batson into the body of Captain Marvel. That is not the case here. There are moments where Captain Marvel, they make reference to him being controlled by Billy a little too much, but for the most part, they are portrayed as two distinct personalities who share common goals and aspirations. So that's interesting from the jump, because Billy kind of all of his heroic actions have to be taken without the benefit of powers. Like, he has to, at one moment near the end, has to enter a dangerous situation without being able to call upon Captain Marvel. So that makes it interesting.
Yep.
It's that classic thing of the reason I struggle with Superman sometimes, where there are moments where it's like, perhaps Billy Batson is a little bit too noble for my taste, but I understand for a younger audience that is kind of supposed to be the point, and it's supposed to be aspirational in nature. So ultimately, it didn't wind up bothering me here the way it might have in some other contexts.
Yeah, and this is a Billy who he tries to do the right thing. He's a little impulsive and he's a little bit irrational at times, but he tries to do the right thing. He trusts adult figures when he first meets them. He doesn't go into anything cynically or in a manner where he's expecting the worst out of anybody. And at times that gets him in trouble. We find that throughout the story. Particularly Tawny has to get onto him for being so impulsive and headstrong and not listening to reason at times. And Captain Marvel even finds some of that rubbing off on him. So yeah, the traditional way that he gets the powers is the same as it always is in Shazam. The wizard grants him let me see if I can recite this, Nick, because I struggle with this, remembering it. So you've got the wisdom of Solomon, mm-hmm. the strength of Hercules, mm-hmm. the speed of Achilles. No, the speed of the courage of Achilles, this power of Zeus, the speed of Mercury is the last one. What is that other A? What is the other A?
I do not know.
Oh. Something dark side?
Atlas was the first one. Achilles was the second one.
Atlas. The stamina of Atlas. Yes. So he gets these powers. Over the course of the story, we also meet his sister, Mary. We meet her towards the end of the story. And she ends up getting a fraction of his powers, but they end up manifesting themselves in different ways. She's faster than he is. She also has this sort of sixth sense, like a spider sense ability, where she senses danger around the corner. She can also determine people's life force. So I thought I don't know if that's traditional or not. I always assume they all had the same powers,
And she stays a kid, whereas I think in other incarnations she's also aged up. So she maintains her powers as a small child. I thought those were cool. I thought those were cool changes because it does make them, it differentiates
them in a way that I think Jeff Johns has done recently with the Shazam family that he's introduced. They differentiated them from a power standpoint, and also having one of them stay in their childlike form is very interesting. So, and presumably maintaining Mary's personality. So, yeah, I really, really enjoyed that. And she's super impulsive. You know, she's a young, you know what that's like, young girls.
Yeah, she's portrayed as being even younger than Billy. So, like, there's an aspect of, like, she just goes off and does things, not because she's necessarily meaning to be impulsive, but, I mean, she just doesn't know right from wrong, or, you know, she has no regard for safety or anything like that, because she's just not old enough to know better. So that's an interesting take.
Nick, what if your daughter Gwen had the powers of Shazam?
Well, I would say to myself, my life's a living hell, and that's not fair. Oh, look at me. That can't be me contemplating suicide while crying in a corner. That's not fair.
Oh, anyway, the central villain of the piece, at least on its surface, appears to be Mr. Mind, who I mentioned earlier is this tiny worm-like creature who's invading the Earth through these giant monsters, and he creates the titular or breastular Monster Society of Evil. And this is sort of a long time Shazam concept. I don't know what it is, I'll be honest with you, traditionally in the comics. But here, Mr. Mind basically takes over the minds of all the insects and animals around the world and brings them together to overthrow humanity, because humanity has abused its place in the world. It's crushed all the bugs, it's killed a lot of the animals and tried to enslave them in circuses and things like that. So all the animals are uprising to destroy humanity through these giant machines that Mr. Mind is controlling. And because he's a schemer, Dr. Savannah gets involved in this and ends up really ultimately, as we find out at the end of the story, being the ultimate evil in this story. Mr. Mind is misplaced, but he's not quite as completely evil as is Dr. Savannah, who is just completely selfish and out for his own gain. So you get a bunch of physical threats here for Captain Marvel in the form of these giant monster men. And then also you get the mental threat, or the really just not even a mental threat, but just the threat that comes with anybody who is so inherently self-interested that you get through Dr. Savannah, who is Mr. Mind is the physical opposite of Captain Marvel, and Dr. Savannah is the spiritual, emotional, intellectual opposite of Billy Batson. So whereas Billy Batson is this good-hearted, innocent young child, Dr. Savannah is this evil old man who's only out for himself and for his own greed and wealth. So I thought that was an interesting dichotomy as well between the two villains of this piece versus both Captain Marvel and Billy Batson.
Yeah, Savannah, it was interesting because, you know, to a layperson not knowing much about Shazam, we always think of, obviously, Black Adam as his primary villain, and then kind of beneath that, I think partially because we know the movie is getting ready to come out featuring Dr. Savannah, we kind of think of him as the next most important. So kind of featuring Mr. Mind for the bulk of the story was an interesting move. You know, it definitely digs a little bit deeper into the rogues gallery than I would have expected, but like you said, Savannah's also there to play a key role as well. Although I'm not really sure what the take on him is traditionally, but I did have a hard time buying, like, why he would be a future threat to Billy Batson, because they don't really show him having any sort of special intellect or any kind of threatening power over Captain Marvel. So I don't think this book was ever followed up on, even though there's a tease of it at the end. So I don't know.
They actually did an unofficial spin-off series out of this, but it did not involve Jeff Smith. It was kind of its own little children's book that had kind of a different feel to it. Mm-hmm. But unfortunately, it did not lead to what you might hope, which would be a Jeff Smith ongoing coming out of this, which I totally would have read. But yeah, it did not come out of that. You mentioning Dr. Savannah and his usage and prominence as a Shazam villain brought to mind my actual favorite use that I've read of Captain Marvel in the actual DC continuity. I haven't read much, but anybody out there that has not read the excellent year-long miniseries or maxi series, whatever you want to call it, 52 from 2007, I think it was. Read that, because that's actually, I don't think you even see Captain Marvel in the story, but it's a great Captain Marvel story because you get Black Adam, which everybody kind of remembers Black Adam's role in 52. But there's a great storyline involving Sivana and Mr. Mind that I think was actually a Grant Morrison story, and it works really, really well. But anyway, back to this. Yeah, I think, that's fair, but I think the idea is that Sivana is just so corrupt, so incredibly corrupt, that he finds ways to worm himself out of and into situations. I think that's kind of alluded to at the beginning on the radio or the TV reports that Billy's watching in his room, that Sivana was a disgraced scientist who somehow ends up becoming Attorney General even though he was disgraced. So I think it's kind of like that Lex Luthor thing of somebody that no matter how much evidence you compile against them, they seem to worm their way out of every situation. Not that there's anyone like that in real life.
No, of course not. We don't know anything about that.
Nope. That's not fair.
That's not fair. Yeah, exactly.
So, with all that being said, the story kind of, in the early going, Captain Marvel doesn't really have much of a physical problem with any of the villains that he encounters. He thrashes them pretty easily if Billy can make him show up. But he has more of a problem later on. So you get some good drama here with Mary is put in danger, and Billy has to make some tough choices, and even has to make a big sacrifice at one point. And I think if it were an ongoing series, I might have bristled a little bit at one of the things that happens here involving Billy's powers near the end, because I think that's a story you could have told over, like if this were an ongoing, I would say you need a story arc to tell of Billy in that situation. I'm sure you know what I'm referring to, Nick. When his power is kind of when Captain Marvel gets sucked into the vortex near the end of the story. But given that this is a one and done, a standalone, I understand they had to wrap that up, and they do it in a way that kind of gives Mary a little bit of prominence in the story, where she ends up giving back to Billy what he once gave to her, a fraction of the Shazam powers. So. Again, it'd be great follow-up, because I'd be interested to see if that weakened Captain Marvel any from what he originally was. So, or if this new version of Captain Marvel would take on the personality of Billy Batson, because the other Captain Marvel was sucked into the vortex. So,
good idea. Yeah.
Yeah. So, a lot of interesting stuff. And who knows, maybe one day they'll get Jeff Smith to do a sequel to this book. I think that would be cool. But
it would be indeed.
Anyway, so overall, we've talked a lot about the story and the characters. We haven't mentioned the art. Nick, that was the thing that really stood out to me the first time I read this, this is kind of how I envision all these characters now in my head. Like, this, no knock on anybody. I mean, Gary Frank did great work on those Shazam backups, but like, this is kind of like, when I think of Shazam, this is sort of the look that I think of now as a result of this probably being my first Shazam book that I read. But I just think it's perfect. I think this is the perfect look for this universe and for these characters, and
especially for this tone, like the kind of story they're telling. Like it's clearly a more kid-focused story, so you kind of dial up the cartoonish aspects of it. It looks kind of like a Saturday morning cartoon, not like one of the ones you would see today, but more like a Saturday morning cartoon that you or I might have watched when we were kids.
Right.
It's kind of got bright colors. It's got rounded edges. Everything kind of pops. I mean, for this type of story,
almost like a Disney cartoon.
Yes, very much so. Yep.
So yeah, I mean the bright colors, as you mentioned, the smoothness of the art, like the action scenes flow well. There's no confusion as to what's going on. Everything is smooth. There's not. I think a lot of times, Nick, and I'm sure you've noticed this as well, in children's comics in particular, it feels like the art is always so sketchy and
unpolished.
Unpolished, exactly, good word for it. Not the case here. This is extremely polished, but it's done in this sort of fun, whimsical, golden age kind of way, and or silver age at least. and never feels unfinished, never feels rushed, never feels unpolished, to use that word again. It just fits the world so perfectly. And I think that's a key to why I enjoyed this so much. And I'm interested in your take as a dad. There is one or two cases of language in here, like "damn it" or something like that. But overall, by and large,
I didn't even notice it. I just brushed right over.
Yeah, I think this is a book that can be enjoyed by kids or adults.
Yeah, absolutely.
What are your thoughts though, as a dad?
Yeah, I think definitely kids can enjoy it, and for me, I enjoyed it for the most part. Knowing what it was. You have clamored and called for this kind of approach to comics much more vigorously than I have, I think, in the past. So I think you probably enjoyed it a little bit more than I did. But at the end of the day, you can't deny quality, and this is definitely a quality book.
So yeah, with all that being said, folks, we dug it. I really dug it. Like it's I would say it's the best example of this type of comic that I've read in terms of a modern comic that is aimed at young audiences, but also enough to capture the imaginations of adults. I thought it was great. I thought Billy Batson was an outstanding character here. So I would highly recommend picking this up, especially if you do have kids and you're interested in them reading comics or getting a comic book that you can read and then maybe give to them to read when you're done with it, or vice versa for that matter. I think kids will enjoy this. I think you'll enjoy this as a reader. So that's my take on it. I give it a big thumbs up. Nick?
Yeah, I'm going to give it a thumbs up as well.
Well, with all that being said, again, that notwithstanding, he's repeating himself. He's using the same words over and over again, and that's not fair. If you would like to give us your thoughts on Jeff Smith and his Monster Society of Evil book, you can tweet us at gphillips8652, at nickduke87. You can drop us a line at gregp@placetobenation.com, nickd@placetobenation.com. Join the Place to Be Nation Comics Facebook page. We kind of dried up on new membership there. We'd love to get some new folks over there talking comics. And in addition to that, Place to Be Nation Comics on Facebook, you can send us smoke signals. And if you've got any complaints about our review, you can tweet them at JRSBBQ. Mm-hmm. That is at JRSBBQ. And, so let us know what you thought about the book. If you have any questions for us about this book, if you're not sure about it or, want to know any questions about tone or, any takes on the character or whatever, let us know. If you're one of those people that has one specific version of this character that you'll ever accept, again, tweet us at JRSBBQ. Mm-hmm. Other than that, folks, we're going to take a little break-a-rooney right now. And when we come back on the other side, we are going to have Reading Watching. We're going to have the rundown. And why don't you just stick with us, folks? We'll be right back.
Promotional consideration paid for by the following.
Place to Be Nations, JT Rosero and Chad Campbell here. We want to let you know that we have over 24 podcasts available on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and PlaceToBeNation.com. We now offer them to you on two great feeds. On the Place to Be Nation Wrestling feed, we dive into topics running the gamut from today's WWE to the glory days of yesteryear and the ins and outs of the territory days. In addition to our full-length shows, we also deliver to you special pod blasts on topics old and new.
The Place to Be Nation Pop feed is a veritable treasure trove of great content, offering tremendous shows covering the land of movies, television, life, comics, and sports, brought to you by the most knowledgeable and insightful folks in the podcast world.
You can find all these great shows, plus archives of our past podcasts from over the past 8 years as well by subscribing to both feeds on iTunes. And while you're there, be sure to rate and leave feedback as well. All of these shows, plus others, available on PlaceToBeNation.com, where we cover pro wrestling, sports, movies, comics, plus in-depth search projects, and much more. Be sure to support our site by using www.PlaceToBeNation.com/Amazon when doing your online shopping. We want to thank our friends at Boneheads Wing Bar, ProWrestlingOnly.com, and TheHistoryOfWrestling.com as well. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Tumblr. PlaceToBeNation.com, the only place to be in your pop culture world.
Wow, stirring words during our break. Mm-hmm. And in addition to those stirring words, we want to let you know about what else we got going on around the Place to Be Nation family. Nick, why don't you tell the folks what's going on over on the Pop feed?
Oh, why don't I? We had a busy week over on the Pop feed with a little something for everyone. In the newest Freak Out Drive-In, Jennifer Smith was joined by Andy Atherton as they did a live watch of Dawn of the Dead. Russell and Sam were back with a new 90s Nothing dissecting the classic Thelma and Louise. Meanwhile, Andy Atherton welcomed in Jennifer and Scott Crusoe on this quarter's, wow, looking forward, looking back, and they dove into the films released in the back end of 2018. Jennifer also joined Russell.
Nick, what got released from your back end recently?
That's not, quite frankly, my rectum is burning, and that's not fair.
Not fair.
Jennifer also joined Russell in a new installment of DC Post-Crisis Management as they talked about Flashpoint. Steve and Kelly were in the house with a new Songs with Friends, and they broke down Just My Imagination and Hard to Concentrate. And finally, the manager, Todd Weber, was joined by Jordan Duncan to look at Netflix's Abducted in Plain Sight on the newest Binge Please. Now, quite frankly, there's a list of pop shows listed on this live read, Greg, and I don't see the Hard-Traveling Fanboys anywhere on there. And that's not fair.
That's not fair. But you know what? For people like us, Nick, life isn't fair.
Quite frankly, for the Hard-Traveling Fanboys, we'd suggest...
life sucks, and then you die.
A new contest, meanwhile, is being held over on Looking Forward, Looking Back. They're going to do a summer movie wager based on how well you think you can predict how this summer's movie releases will do at the domestic box office. Now, what you got to do here is you got to pick the top 10 movies in order of how you think they're going to finish in domestic box office gross. You will also need to include 3 wildcard picks as well as which movie you think will be the biggest bomb of the summer. You see, the rules are quite simple, but actually quite complex. Send your picks to lflbpop@gmail.com by Monday, April 22nd. Any movie that is released on or after April 26th is eligible, with the tally ending on Labor Day, September 2nd. The winner of the contest gets to be on a future episode of Laugh in Theater and pick the comedy movie of their choosing.
Also, you can win Ben Stein's money.
If only.
Remember that show? It was a good show.
Mm-hmm.
Well, maybe good's pushing it, but it was a show. Over on the wrestling feed, PTBN Wrestling, that is, in the newest Place to Be podcast, JT Scott and Peter Winson take a look at the March 1989 Saturday night's main event. Remember where you were in March of 1989, Nick?
No.
Fair enough. Nick and Greg, whoever those people are, delivered What If, number 2, as they examine a world where CM Punk doesn't leave WWE in 2014. Boy, what do you think about that topic, Nick?
Oh, I think it sucks.
Fair enough. And we continue our dip into the Where the Big Boys Play vault as Chad and Parv start to look at Starrcade 1987. Do you remember what headline that show, Nick?
Was that Garvin and Flair?
Garvin and Flair.
Yeah.
Garvin and Flair. Flair and Garvin. In the cage, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. Hands of Stone, Ronald Garvin.
Alleged cross-dresser, Ronald Garvin.
And be sure, inexplicably popular in the Deep South. He was a good wrestler, though. And be sure to check out PlaceToBeNation.com as things are getting back up and running there with plenty of projects and reviews to come. Content will be picking back up in the days and weeks ahead. Finally, be sure to give a like to the PTBN Greatest Candy Tournament Facebook page so you can participate in daily polls as we determine which candy is indeed the greatest of all time. The polls also go out via Twitter. We are now into round 2 with a champion being crowned on Easter Sunday, appropriately enough. Now, on a personal note, I would again encourage anyone voting to vote against any sour candies that are included. Damn, I was hoping to trigger Nick there, but he didn't react, and that's not fair.
Oh, that can't be us having to do a page-long live read. That's not fair.
Oh, boy. Let's just beat it into the ground.
Yes.
I'm good with it.
Yes, we are. David Sunday, that's not fair coming for you.
So, with all that being said, let's move on to a little segment where we talk about what we've been reading and or watching. It is a segment known the world over as reading and watching. Now, Nick, I'm just going to be flat out honest with you. I haven't been reading anything other than this book.
Nope. Me neither.
So let's move right on along, quite frankly, to watching. Mm-hmm. And boy, have I been watching some stuff now. Mm. Now, I have... I'm
going to be honest, I don't even know what would fall under this week's list for inclusion. We watched so
I think
much.
It will be the last 2 episodes of Arrow and the last episode of The Flash.
What about Supergirl?
And it would probably include that as well, but I haven't watched it.
Oh, for God's sake.
I'm behind.
You haven't watched any Cryer Lex yet.
Nope, not yet. I'm behind. But I will catch up. But in any event, before we get to that, I have watched episode 2 of Doom Patrol, which was very good. I will admit that I was tired that night. I dozed off a little bit towards the end, but I woke up again. It was a very funny episode. Very good stuff. I'm blown away by Brendan Fraser in particular. He's putting in a really, really strong work. And he's been great. It's a really good show. I'm looking forward to you watching it, Nick. It's delightfully zany. It just clearly doesn't take itself seriously. Very enjoyable stuff. And funny as hell. So, Doom Patrol kicking ass. Watched 2 episodes of The Walking Dead. I'm still 5 episodes behind, believe it or not. But I watched another 2 episodes of The Walking Dead, picking up steam a little bit from what it was. Remember the mid-season premiere I reported back on this show was terrible, and I stand by that. And the episode directly after that also was not very good. But then they did the episode kind of explaining the origin. They did the episode kind of explaining the origins of Alpha, and that was okay. And then they did the episode after that, and I thought that was really, really good, and or not really, really good, but just good. And I can tell the show's starting to pick up a little bit of steam now. They've got their villain in place. They've established that she is firmly a villain for sure, and some of the stuff that they're doing with character building on Daryl in particular has been great. Where he's kind of against his own will stepping into this leadership and almost a fatherly role for the community, and he's clearly uncomfortable with that. But it's been good. I'm enjoying it, and I'm really enjoying Ezekiel and Carol as well, and I'm terribly afraid of what's going to be coming their way potentially, but we'll see how that develops. And other than that, I don't know if I've seen anything else comic book related. Watched another episode of Young Justice, actually. Have you watched any more of that, Nick?
No, I have not yet.
It's good. It is good. The most recent episode was actually very shocking to me because they have a little bit of Young Justice in the episode, but it's mainly a Vandal Savage origin story, and it's awesome. It's really, really good. And it explains the origins of his relationship with Darkseid.
Oh,
so
okay.
Keep an eye out. Keep an eye out for that. All right, so with that being said, let's move on to the CW, and let's get Flash first, because I remember it a little bit less on account of I've seen Arrow more recently. So 2 weeks ago was the last episode of The Flash before an inexplicable mid-season break, or three-quarter season break, I guess.
Yes.
And quite frankly, notwithstanding, This was the best episode in some time, I thought.
Yes, for a couple of reasons. One, Chris Klein is still in the episode, but he's not in it as much, although the episode kind of gets derailed near the end because they count on him to emote and act and draw an emotional response from you again.
At least he momentarily stops doing that stupid voice.
But it's still that but now he hasn't been doing it like to the degree that he used to, but it's still like an undercurrent. Like that's how he is doing the character now. Is that voice is kind of toned down a bit, but still there, throughout everything he says. But the Nora stuff is finally starting to come full circle, and the closing of this episode with the kind of three-way showdown between her and Barry, or her, the team, and Sherlock was outstanding. That was probably the best Sherlock scene that we have seen to date.
And let me say, after watching that scene, just another reminder, anybody that suggests that Grant Gustin can't play the Flash on the big screen because he's a TV actor can go fuck themselves.
Well, now, what are you saying about Warner Brothers leadership?
I'm saying that they say that Grant Gustin can't act in a movie and play the Flash. We can't have our TV Flash be our movie Flash because that's not fair.
There you go.
Then again, maybe you could say that I'm saying that because Grant Gustin's not playing the Flash, that's
not fair. Yeah. God,
But
I wonder how many people have turned the podcast off at this point.
I would have.
Yeah, probably so.
But you know what? If they turn off the podcast, maybe they'll go watch that promo,
Yes.
and more people will be aware of the greatest speech in American history.
Then they'll come back to the
Vince
podcast.
McMahon, life sucks, folks.
Yeah, Vince McMahon, life sucks. Type it into YouTube. You don't want the 17 seconds. You want the full 4 minutes and 30. That's what you want.
That's right.
The full impact.
Anyway, well, speaking of pot bellies and small genitalia, anybody that says that Grant Gustin can't play the Flash on the big screen is nuts. The guy is a hell of an actor.
Yeah, he's outstanding.
So I thought that scene was great. So really, and the thing, Nick, that was the best about this episode, this season, maybe more than any other season, and it has felt like, for a show called The Flash, it has felt like they're spinning their wheels.
Yes.
So much this
They
season.
have an end
with
point in
nothing
mind,
to
clearly,
happen.
but they didn't have any way to fill out the other 18 episodes that it takes them to get there.
It reminds me, actually, of Arrow Season 4. If you remember, was very similar in that regard, where they didn't have any forward momentum in the Damien Dark storyline for what felt like, 10 episodes in a row.
But then the problem with that one was even the end point they had in mind wasn't very good. The whole thing was just by far the worst. I would probably hold that up as the worst season of CW DC television to date, which sucks because that's our favorite.
Yeah, favorite
shows.
DC show. Yeah, I mean, I think this Flash season was pushing it at times because I think they've definitely hit that season 4 wall, but they're not season 4; they're on season 5 now, right, or 6? Mm-hmm. Which one is it? Let's see.
Flash.
Savitar.
Flash was Reverse Flash, Zoom, Savitar, Thinker. This is 5.
Thinker. This is 5. Yeah. So they've hit the season 5 wall, but hopefully this is building momentum as Raw rolls on, Nick.
Mm-hmm.
Now let's move over to Arrow because we got 2 hugely eventful episodes of Arrow to talk about. Number 1, Star City 2040 was the episode, and this was an episode that took place entirely in the flash forward era that we've seen throughout this season, with Mia Smoke, as we learn is her name now, Connor Hawke, William, the grown-up version of William, an aged Black Canary, and an aged Renee and his grown-up daughter. So that was sort of your cast of characters for this episode, and also we meet older Felicity in this episode and find out what's been happening to her. We get to see the birth of Mia, which was really cool, I thought, especially given some events that we'll talk about in the rundown, Nick. It was cool to see that moment, and we get to see her training under Nyssa, who shows up briefly, which was really cool as well. I always love when Nyssa pops up. We haven't seen her this season, I don't think, to this point, so that was great. And see her kind of working alongside William to figure out where Felicity has gone, why she's gone off the grid, who's holding her captive, and unravel a little bit of this mystery that we've seen going on in the future. I was not expecting to like this episode, Nick, because we've often talked about on the show, Arrow is at its best when it's strongly focused on Oliver Queen, John Diggle, and Felicity Smoke, and the idea of an episode without two of those three in it, and without a heavy focus on the third, mainly focused on other characters, I dreaded, honestly, because I just didn't think they could pull it off. Man, I loved this episode. I was shocked at how much I loved it. Mia was awesome. I don't know the actress's name. She was great. Connor Hawke, man, I've never cared a bit about Connor Hawke in the comics. Well, not once, not ever.
Well, this version also has nothing to do with the Connor Hawke of the comics.
Yes, no monasteries here. This is a
no monasteries, no relationship to Oliver. This is just Connor Hawke in name only here.
Yes, this is the adopted son of John Diggle, who we know is the birth son of Bronze Tiger, and he was so charismatic and so captivating in this episode. I would totally, if that's where we get, we probably won't, but if they give us a spinoff with this cast as a team, I would be all in, because I actually agree with something our friend Russell said off the air, which is that this version of Team Arrow is much more compelling than the, quote, new Team Arrow that they introduced a few years ago with the contemporary versions of Black Canary, Wild Dog, and in particular, my favorite character, Mr. Terrific. This was a really compelling group of characters, I thought, William included.
I would agree completely. Outstanding episode. Really not a bad character in the bunch, other than, I am still not psyched about Old Man Renee. I wish he would kind of go away, but other than that, good stuff.
I wish he would at least stop wearing the wig.
Yes. Absolutely.
Real quick, lightning round question here. Worst wig in Arrow history: Renee's wig, Dinah's wig in the flash forwards, or Oliver's wig from the island?
Renee's wig.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's easily taken the cake.
Yes.
All right, now that brings us to the...
Hello? Well?
Can you hear me?
Quite frankly, you may be listening to the podcast and think, oh, there's awkward silence in the middle. That's not fair.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
That's not fair.
Let's just move on as if nothing happened.
Yes. So, the other episode of Arrow from last week, before an inexplicable 3 to 4 week break in Arrow, which we have come to expect at random times, was a return to the present day, and in particularly the fallout of what happened in the 2 episodes ago, where Laurel Lance, our new version of Laurel Lance, Black Siren, confronts Emiko that she, with the information that she knows that she killed Ricardo Diaz, and that she is therefore not telling the truth to her brother and the rest of the team. So this episode focuses on Laurel trying to prove that to the team, that Emiko is bad, that she is not, who she says she is. And so Oliver has to take it upon himself to investigate that. And over the course, this was a very action-packed episode. We got several awesome action scenes in this one. We get to find out, finally, the truth about Dante and the Ninth Circle, to a degree anyway. There's still more about the Ninth Circle that they haven't revealed. But we get some pretty shocking revelations, Nick. This episode had like a 1-2 punch of twists at the end that I was not expecting. One on the surface was a big surprise to me, simply because I didn't think they'd have the guts to go there with a character on Arrow. They usually have not done that with a newly introduced person that close to Oliver. Just for the pain that it's going to put Oliver through, which I know he's been through the damn ringer before, but you finally get a sister, and another sister, and here she is. And then the other revelation at the very end of the episode, I totally didn't see coming.
No, nor did I.
and it worked on me, man. I loved it. I thought this was another great episode. Some outstanding fight scenes, some great emotional moments for Oliver in particular in this episode. And that gut punch at the end, when you realize the truth of Emiko and what the Ninth Circle has done, it ties the entire series together in a way that, because that was one thing I was struggling with looking forward on this season, which I've enjoyed to this point. But I was thinking, how is the Ninth Circle going to be? How are they going to tie it into sort of the through line of what we saw in the prison arc with Oliver trying to come to terms with what happened to his father and what his father represented? Now we learn how it's all tied together and how it's going to be tied together moving forward. It's that thing that we talk about, Nick, where the audience gets information that the main character doesn't have.
Right.
And so it's that kind of ticking time bomb of that emotional time bomb that's coming when Oliver finds out the truth. What a damn gut punch. What did you think of this one?
Liked it a whole lot. Feels like it's starting to pick up some momentum. We kind of wondered throughout this season, like, what is really the story of the season? There have been some really good one-off episodes, but it didn't feel like there was really a season-long arc.
And of course, the prison arc, yeah.
Right, but after the prison arc, it doesn't really feel like there's been an arc to the season, so to speak. But here, now, it feels like we're starting to build some momentum so that when we come back from this random stupid break, it'll be all forward momentum as we move towards the finale from here on out.
And man, given what we were going to talk about in the rundown and given what we know about Emiko now, the emotional gut punches are coming. They're coming. Yes. And but there's no getting around that.
As we'll discuss that during the rundown, though.
Yes. And also I think it's obviously what's going on now is going to tie in a lot more closely to the flash forwards than maybe it was looking for a while there.
Yes.
Where that's all starting to come together now. So anyway, good stuff from both the Arrow and the Flash. So I guess rank the 3 episodes? I don't know.
No, let's pass that this week.
No, what has happened in the video game world? I have not played anything comic book related, but I will be soon. Hint, hint. So, with that being said, let's move on to our weekly look at the news and notes in the world of comic books. Well, quite frankly, I'd suggest that it's a little tiny segment called The Rundown.
Welcome to the Rundown, where we talk some comic news. Welcome to the Rundown, where we talk about movies too.
Oh, he milked the segment and caused it to drag on longer than I wanted it to, and that's not fair. Well, to start things off, Nick, what a transition from our last topic. We got some devastating news. As many of you know, Arrow has been our favorite DC show from its inception. We love it. It's our one true love in the CW verse, although we love all the shows. This week, we got another crushing blow. We obviously told you on our last edition of the Rundown that Arrow was going to end after a 10-episode 8th season. And that was devastating enough, but we can kind of put that off, kick that can down the road, and tackle that when the time comes, right? Well, then we get this. Because Arrow actress Emily Bett Rickards, who portrays our beloved Felicity Smoke, our favorite CW DC woman, the character that, and Stephen Amell alluded to this as well, the character that really made Arrow work from the beginning, the character that really made the show take off and carve out its own identity. She announced that she is leaving the show at the end of this season, the 7th season. She has been with the drama since its debut in 2012. I think she popped up in the 2nd episode, if I'm not mistaken. and has or maybe even in the pilot. I don't remember if she was in the pilot or not, but she was there from the beginning, and she was originally just going to be a recurring star. Had so much chemistry with Stephen Amell that the writers realized their mistake, made her a full-time player, and made her a focal point of the show, which really made it take off. Anyway, she announced that she is leaving at the end of the season, and we found out today that she's going to be doing a play, actually. And really devastating stuff. Stephen Amell's emotional reaction to it was tough to watch. He had a great video talking about their time together and, that how close their friendship is. And John Diggle, the guy that plays Diggle, also posted about that and said very similar things. This is just a tough one to take, Nick. I mean, I don't know how you have Arrow without Felicity.
Yeah, it's tough for sure. Especially given the fact that they're only coming back for 10 more episodes. You would have thought that maybe she could have held on for, another 8 months or however long it would have taken, but apparently she had other things she wanted to do, and, we have no choice but to, of course, wish her well in her future endeavors.
She wants to go do other things, and
that's not
fair.
Exactly. No, this sucks, obviously, but we can at least take some solace in the fact that, given the flash forwards, I think can pretty much be taken as canon at this point. At least we don't have to deal with a Felicity death.
Yeah.
And seemingly she and Oliver are still together and happy. So I'm thinking it's more of a Felicity has to go into hiding for some sort of reason. And I have to imagine, even though they haven't commented on this, she will be back at the very least for the series finale.
I would hope
year.
so.
I mean, I can't imagine doing that episode without her.
I would certainly hope so. Obviously, we're bummed about this, but I am also holding out the thought that she's not going to get killed off because of what we see in the flash forward. So, that notwithstanding, that is not fair. But you know what else is not fair, Nick?
What's that? Life?
Life, clearly. The continued existence of the show Gotham.
Oh, God.
Because this week, in what I still think may be an April Fool's joke, but because of the nature of this show, it's just believable enough not to be. We appear to have gotten our first look at Gotham's version of the Joker.
Good Lord.
Yes, the Joker. Not Jerome. Not Jerome's twin brother. But a Jerome or Jerome's twin brother that turns into the Joker. Portrayed by Cameron Monaghan. And
you all right over there?
Well, I suppose. I'm looking at this picture again. We see we got an image of Cameron Monaghan in full makeup and costume as the Joker. And Nick, he looks like I don't know. He looks a little bit like Biff Tannen. He looks a little bit like Emperor Palpatine, who's put on a disguise to go to a galactic brothel. Folks, if you haven't seen this image, you just got to look it up. If it's an April Fool's gag, it's a great one. But again, the sad part about it is the April Fool's gag only works because we've come to expect terrible looks like this from Gotham. This looks like the worst take on the Joker we've ever seen.
It's this or the Leto take, right? Like
yeah,
you kind of got to make
those are the
mind.
contenders.
The Leto take is bad because it just is so over the top and ridiculous. This, I'm not sure what they were going for. Honestly, his skin,
old man scarred.
Yeah, his skin looks like it's kind of falling off a little bit. His hair is like virtually non-existent, and it's just white. It's not even really green or anything. This is bad. Like just bad. I don't really know any other way to put it.
And yet, doesn't it feel appropriate?
Oh, it does, because the show sucks. I mean, if you enjoy Gotham, this is what you deserve, in my view.
Well, then again, maybe we're not the target audience for Gotham, and that's not fair.
Exactly.
Well, one thing that's also not fair is the fact that we have to wait longer to get the premiere of the Stargirl series on the DC Universe app. Word came out this week that DC Universe's Stargirl will be coming sometime in 2020. Originally, it was expected to be debuting in August or September of this year. Pushing it back a little bit. In all honesty, though, this is probably a good thing because it will give them time to work on the special effects for what I'm assuming is going to be a pretty special effects heavy show.
Yeah, especially given that first image that was released that showed a huge version of Stripe. So if that's the case, yeah, definitely need to work on these special effects a little bit.
Indeed, Peter. And other news, I've not watched this show, but Umbrella Academy has been renewed and we'll get a second season on Netflix. Nick, have you watched this one yet?
No, but my wife has, surprisingly enough. So,
really?
Yeah, good for her, I guess.
Let me rephrase. Really?
Yeah.
Had to use a more manly voice there. Well, that's good news for people fans of that show. Perhaps it's a show that you'll watch at some point, Nick.
Probably not.
Fair enough.
Given what little I know about the Gerard Way approach to storytelling in comics, not for me, quite frankly.
You want him to show you the way.
Mm-hmm.
Every day.
Every day, yes.
Well, one thing that hasn't been seen in many days is Jim Lee at Image Comics. But that's all about to change. It's all about to change, Nick, because as I'm seeing on this link that I'm clicking right here, Todd McFarlane of Todd McFarlane's Spawn fame is welcoming Jim Lee back to Image Comics to draw something for the milestone 300th issue of Spawn. 300 issues of Spawn, Nick. Can you believe it?
I can't, honestly. I also can't believe reading the story that Todd McFarlane is coming back to write and draw the ongoing himself after 300. That's certainly a unique situation.
I did not see that coming either, especially since isn't he writing and directing the Spawn movie as well?
Is he? Is he? I don't know.
I mean, this is shocking. I mean, that's Todd McFarlane doing internal comic book art is unexpected in 2019. I'm very skeptical of that, but if it happens,
I was about to say that just means that we'll never see Spawn 400 in our lifetimes if that's the case.
Right. If it happens, I mean, certainly, I think Todd McFarlane's work has been missed in comics. So interesting stuff there from Image. Moving on from that, DC Universe.
Yes.
The DC Universe app that we rightly criticized at first when it launched, gave it some tough love, would you say, Nick?
I would say that. We criticized it from a place of just wanting it to be better. I mean, like, it wasn't like we were opposed to the idea, but, I mean, as we said at the time, when it came to the comics component, you had an example out there of how to do it, and the model they were using at first just didn't make sense. It wasn't a better kind of different. It was just a really bad kind of different.
What you're saying, Nick, is that it wasn't fair.
It wasn't fair.
Well, now, thankfully, we're about facing on the DC Universe app because we really have for some time, starting in January when they started bolstering their comic book offerings by the thousands, and adding on to their archive. And when you factor in the fact that they've added the 1970s Shazam show, and they've added all of these, the Aquaman pilot, all these sort of historical oddities, but now they've outdone themselves. Now they've finally gotten on board with kind of what our vision was for the DC Universe app. That's right, it's our vision, not the company's vision, for the app. Because at WonderCon, we found out that DC will be adding all of their digital comics output over the past 80 years to the app. So what this means is, as of a few months from now, or really as of right now, they're starting to add on this, there are eventually going to be over 20,000 comic books available on the DC Universe app and growing.
Mm-hmm.
They also announced that they will be doing a 12-month delay on new comics.
Mm-hmm.
And
which, for the record, is 6 months more than the Marvel 6-month delay, but I don't care about that.
No, I don't
Personally.
either. And they are going to be going back and digitizing older comics and out-of-print runs and things like that. This was a home run announcement from DC in our eyes. And you know, everybody focuses with this app on the TV offerings or the movie offerings, but frankly, we said a long time ago, both of us, that we would pay the price that we're paying right now, and more even. And I hope DC is not listening to our podcast right now, but we would pay more than what we're paying right now just for a comprehensive comic component of this app.
A non-rotational,
but when you add in
a hypothetical,
non-rotational
DC Comics online unlimited subscription service. Jesus
service.
Christ, Greg, what are we going to do? We got to figure out a new title sponsor for the next Place to Be Nation Pop Peter David Memorial Fantasy Comics Draft.
I got it. A hypothetical good Green Lantern movie.
There you go.
So yeah, this is great, man. I'm really excited about this. There's so many great runs. This is going to be a same thing, much like Marvel Unlimited, where there are going to be more comics than we will ever be able to read in our lifetime.
Exactly, and it will be done at it will be available to us at a remarkable value, the best value, soon to be the best value in comics, because if they have their entire back catalog as they've promised, and they're at a lower price point than Marvel Unlimited, and they're providing the video content as well, this is soon to be the best value in comics. Now, if I'm DC, I'm at least matching Marvel Unlimited in terms of price, bump it up a couple dollars a month, because you have the video component there, and DC's library, in theory, should go back a bit further than Marvel, so you should have more comics available to you at a certain point, but
and the digitization process, you know, is going to take a while on some of these things, but shit, man, if they get it all, it's going to be incredible. And
as I understand it, they're going to be loading all the things that they already have digitized over the next few months, and then there will be ongoing efforts to digitize the rest of it. But so much of it has already been digitized that it's going to be a massive amount of comics coming.
Yeah, and they've got the added bonus of their live content or their original content. Titans 50-50 a little bit, but Doom Patrol's been very well received, and Young Justice has been very well received. So if they can keep delivering there, they're going to have a very unique product there. And even if the Warner Brothers app absorbs those TV and movie properties, as we expect it might, the comics component is now going to be enough to sustain it on its own. So good stuff there from a company that is near and dear to our hearts, but doesn't always make us happy. Now, about that Tom King Batman. No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding. I'm not going to say that that's not fair.
Oh, I bought a story thinking I was going to get to see a wedding, and then it got called off, and I don't like it. I'm upset. That's not fair.
For people that want to see Batman and Catwoman together, life sucks! And then you die. All right. So, not Scott Snyder, Zack Snyder, or Scott Steiner, is in the news, Nick, for the first time in some time.
He kind of pops up every once in a while for some reason.
So, he's been kind of laying low since he left the Justice League project and had family issues. But writer-director, it says here in this story, Zack Snyder has some harsh words for those who had issues with his Batman killing people in Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice. During a Watchmen Director's Cut Q&A broadcast on his Vero, what in the hell is a Vero?
I don't know.
The filmmaker shared his thought on...
We already did the live read, Greg. You don't have to read the damn thing verbatim.
Well, I am. On some of the negative response to his DCEU films. Quote, and I quote, Nick, I received an email from the anonymous Newsarama general manager. Oh, like, Batman killed a guy. I'm like, wake the fuck up. So I guess that's what I'm saying about once you've lost your virginity to this fucking movie and then you come and say to me something like, my superhero wouldn't do that. I'm like, are you serious? I'm like, the fucking road on that.
Down
the fucking road on that. You know what I mean? It's a cool point. Look, I'm 100% fine with it. It's a cool point of view to be like, my heroes are still innocent. My heroes didn't fucking lie to America. My heroes didn't embezzle money from their corp. My heroes didn't commit any atrocities. That's cool, but you're living in a fucking dream world. I'm not reading the rest of it. There's a lot more. Well, maybe I should, Nick. What do you think?
I don't know.
I'll read it. Mythologically speaking, I'm 100% fine, and I love more than anything Superman and Batman, but in the same way Alan Moore was fed up with the fucking, like, clearly this is a response, where Watchmen talked about comic books in the same way that this movie talks about comic book movies, but it talks about comic books at their most broken. Now you're laughing, Nick, but in fairness, I think he's referring to Watchmen here. If I'm not mistaken in my reading of this quote. Let me see. I don't know. I think I have to think he's referring to Watchmen and not BVS. Anyway, but it talks about comic books at their most broken. He was addressing that. The thing with comic book movies, and you know I'm a fan, I go to see them, I love them. And they end the quote there. So,
Good Lord, man. Where do you want to start with this?
Well, I will say, if he's referring to Watchmen, I totally understand his Alan Moore quote, and I actually have felt that way, that the movie does approach superhero movies in the way that the book approached comics, to a degree.
I would, to a degree.
Yes. And here's the other aspect of this. I know a lot of people have been getting worked up over this quote and everything, but I got no problem with the quote. I don't agree with him necessarily.
Yeah, I mean, like, I'm not offended by it. I laugh at it. Is the best way I can put it.
My issue, my deal with this whole thing is, like, this dude has taken so much shit from people. I agree. So much shit from people.
And I think it's starting to manifest itself in a negative fashion, which I can't blame him for.
I agree. No, I agree completely, because I would have snapped a long time ago. Because, like, at a certain point, people just need to let the shit go. Right. Like, it's a movie at the end of the day. It's done. It's over with. I don't agree with, we've talked countless times about our issues with the DCEU and our issues with Batman versus Superman even. And the problems with putting the control of the entire DC universe in the hands of Zack Snyder. So I can't begrudge him though for striking back a little bit and for, it's starting to wear on him. He's been through a lot in his personal life, but it's also, I'm sure, when you've taken so many tweets and so many think pieces and so many comments from people over the years, I'm sure it wears at you over time. So while, yes, the comments are very strange, particularly the virginity comment.
And a bit self-aggrandizing. Like, he's kind of putting himself on this very high pedestal creatively that even and I'm someone who has enjoyed, honestly, the bulk of the guy's film work. But to say to himself, I was really making the same kind of commentary on the status that Alan Moore was. Dude, recognize who you are and what you are. You're the guy best known for making 300, which was a visually stunning, cheesy action movie. You are not qualified to consider yourself a commenter or an auteur on the level of Alan Moore.
Well, and I think the thing about Zach that I like his movies for the most part, and I think his Watchmen is brilliant. I think it's one of the best comic book movies ever made. But the problem that I run into with him in general is he has been at his best when he has been adapting someone else's work.
Yes.
And he has been at his worst when he's been trying to tell his own original story. Mm-hmm. And so, I'll leave it at that, I suppose. But, at the same time, like I said, I don't blame him for feeling that way. I don't think that any of his movies have been that bad. Even Batman vs. Superman, I think the extended cut's pretty good.
Yeah.
I do think his approach was flawed by rushing to that movie instead of doing a Man of Steel sequel.
And I would argue that even the extended cut is a good movie in spite of his approach
Yes.
to Batman. Like that's really what the quote is. I mean, it starts off about that, about the criticism of his Batman killing. And I think where he kind of loses his point somewhere in the middle is where he's talking about, it's a cool point of view to be like, my heroes are still innocent. My heroes didn't commit any atrocities. That's cool, but you're living in a fucking dream world. I think you're missing the point. The point is not that a Batman character in a somewhat grounded and gritty superhero movie, the way BVS was trying to be, can't be tempted to do wrong things, can't be tempted to take lives or commit atrocities, as he so eloquently put it. But the point is that he resists that temptation. You can use the temptation as an example of it being grounded and use it to show a realistic interpretation while also showing him being heroic and resisting that urge.
Right.
And I would argue, outside of a very few specific interpretations that I understand this was trying to take some inspiration from, poorly I might add, the Batman as a killer thing has never really worked. So I don't know. It's a laughable quote to me.
Now, in fairness, we were just extolling the virtues of Man of Steel and defending the scene in which Superman breaks Zod's neck.
Yes, but then we also talked about in that show, I believe, how ideally that would be used down the road to show the foundation for his no-killing thing. Mm-hmm. And when you have a Batman in this film who does not kill one person, kills... God, Greg, how many people do you think he racks up in that Batmobile chase scene alone?
Oh, I don't know. I'd have to rewatch it.
That's the point. It wasn't really being done in service of the story, I think is the crazy.
And then I think another point, though, is when you go back and watch the Keaton Batman movies, he's pretty aggressive with his vehicle. And particularly in Batman Returns is the one that I'm mainly thinking of.
Oh, yeah.
He burns the dude alive with the Batmobile. But yeah, anyway, yeah, I think Zach had a very specific version of Superman and Batman that he liked, a Frank Miller inspired version, and was unwilling to waver from that vision, even in service of the characters and the story. So, but that's that, and that's it for him for now in our show until he does another comic book movie or says something else interesting. So. Moving on to The Suicide Squad by James Gunn. We've been talking about, is it going to be a reboot? Is it going to be a sequel? Nobody really will come out and say it officially, or people will say conflicting things. But one thing that's interesting, Will Smith dropped out of the movie. Rick Flag is not expected to come back, that actor, but we did get confirmation this week from Jay Courtney that he will be reprising his role as Captain Boomerang for the movie, which he says he can't reveal any details about the script or anything like that, but Boomerang will be back for sure. I like this. I don't know if we talked about him as one of the things that actually worked in Suicide Squad, but he would be right there behind Will Smith and Margot Robbie as one of the things that actually did succeed, in my opinion, in the first Suicide Squad movie.
As much as I enjoyed seeing him, my dream version of him returning for the sequel is take all the returning characters, all the surviving characters from the first movie. Him, Killer Croc, I believe, survives the first movie. Does El Diablo survive? I don't remember.
No, I think he died. Rick Flag survived.
Yeah, Deadshot survived. Harley survived. Was it just the 4?
I feel like it was. I mean,
Enchantress?
Diablo maybe. And Enchantress, yeah, I think so.
So yeah, get those guys, those 3, because you're actually going to use Deadshot in the movie, and you're going to use Harley and Harley going forward. So take Killer Croc, Boomerang, and Enchantress, and in the first, maybe in the opening credits, you blow their heads off, as a gag, to wipe the slate clean and set up the stage for a new, to kind of illustrate that fact that this is the Suicide Squad. They are viewed as being expendable by the powers that be, and I think it'd be a funny gag that would fit well in a more violent version of a James Gunn movie. So that's what I want to see personally.
That would be interesting. Of course, I do enjoy his Captain Boomerang.
Oh, I do too. But I mean, if the rumors were true about Gunn kind of wanting to do his own thing, I would think you probably wouldn't feature him too heavily. But maybe I'm wrong. We'll see.
We'll have to let it play out and see where it goes. Hopefully it'll be fair. All right, so Nick, we have to go over to the. We might have to start carving out a corner for the X-Men here in the studio. Because let's move over to Fox Studios.
The X-shaped corner of the L-shaped studios.
Yes. Well, an X-shaped corner. How would that even work?
I don't know, but we'd make it work.
Make it work. So, Disney / 21st Century Fox they've got this New Mutants film in the can.
Which, by the way, they are still advertising. Like, as of a couple weeks ago, the poster saying it was coming out in April is still up at my local theater.
Well, they're on the ball on that one. Yeah. Wolfsbane actor Maisie Williams, who I think plays someone on Game of Thrones.
Plays Arya Stark on Game of Thrones, yes.
She says, even she is not sure what's going on with the movie, or even if it will come out. Quote, who knows when the fuck that's going to come out, Williams told Rolling Stone. Hopefully this interview will make everyone hurry up a little bit. She explained that the planned reshoots for New Mutants, which were designed to make the film scarier, never took place, leaving even more questions about the fate of the movie.
You know what's crazy is I liked the trailer that dropped like at this. How long has that trailer been out? Like a year at this point, or 2 years?
Yeah.
How long?
It said the trailer hit in late 2017.
Yeah, so a year and a half almost, and I liked it.
Yep.
I was looking forward to this. I was like,
I liked it.
This looks different, And the reshoots, because what I liked about the trailer was kind of the horror vibe. And the rumors were they were going to reshoot it to kind of make it more of a horror movie. And so I thought at the time, hey, this is kind of like, okay, you've got Deadpool serving the zany comedy niche in the X-Men universe. You've got Logan with the serious drama niche. Now you've kind of got this is going to do a horror thing. And it felt like they were kind of going to do genre films,
right,
within the X universe. And apparently not. Apparently this is just never going to get released.
Well, we'll just have to see where that goes. One thing that is going to get released, apparently, we've been led to believe, is the Marvel Cinematic Universe film The Eternals.
Yes.
Director Chloe Zhao is directing it, and according to The Hollywood Reporter, none other than Angelina Jolie, one of my favorite actresses when I was in high school,
yes.
is in talks to star in the film.
Mm-hmm.
She will apparently be playing Cersei, is the idea. I don't know anything about Cersei outside of that one Avengers story that we read. But nonetheless, it is Angelina Jolie, an award-winning actress, a very talented actress. So that's a big get for the MCU, is it not?
Yeah, big name. They always, it's always a good land whenever they can get a big name actress. And, they're going to be losing a lot of star power, presumably anyway, after Endgame. So they need to restock the coffers, and I guess that makes sense to have her coming in.
Did you say Endgame?
I did say Endgame.
Interesting. Well, do you remember the professional wrestler named Fandango?
Yes, I remember him, even though he still exists.
Well, do you remember him?
I do. Yes.
So, Fandango apparently runs his own movie ticket selling business on the side. And
let me tell you something. None of the movie ticket businesses were run very well during this day, and that's not fair.
It's not fair. I don't get to be the very first person in line to see the movie. That's not fair.
That's right.
Anyone who experienced trying to purchase tickets from
my God.
Fandango Tuesday morning probably saw this one coming. So, as it turns out, Avengers Endgame, quote, crushed the 24-hour first-day pre-sales record held by 2015 Star Wars The Force Awakens in just 6 hours.
Yes.
Force Awakens holds the record at $57 million for a Thursday night preview, which it says may be tough despite pre-sales for Endgame to overcome due to 3-hour runtime. Nonetheless, the advanced ticket sales shattered all records. Now, Nick, how do you feel about a Marvel movie shattering a Star Wars record?
I don't really have strong feelings about it. Do you think I'm upset about it or something?
I think that you might think to yourself at some point,
Here we go.
perhaps that, that's not fair.
No, I don't think that's myself at all.
You did think that about not being able to be the very first person in line to see this movie.
I was pretty upset this morning trying to buy my damn tickets, which even if I could have gotten tickets, I still wouldn't have been the first person because I have a T-ball game that day.
That's not fair.
I can't go to the
Don't
theater.
go sell my Lawler.
No sell your what?
My Lawler.
Oh, that was Lawler. I didn't know what it was. I couldn't tell if it was Lawler or a bizarre version of Young JR. But anyway, the point being,
Small you to tell you, it is you, Cole.
no, yeah. As someone who tried to buy tickets to this today, this was nuts. That's what I actually texted Danielle. I was like, the last time I had this much trouble buying tickets to a movie was The Force Awakens, which, as we know, wound up being the highest grossing opening weekend in film history. I think that record still stands.
And we're talking about it on the longest running weekly episodic comic book podcast in all of Place to Be Nation.
And that's not fair. The point is, this is kind of remarkable. Like, 3-hour runtime is obviously going to hurt it, but I think we really need to start considering it possible. We could be looking at the biggest opening in the history of film for this, which is just remarkable that comic books have come so far in just 10 years, really, 10 to 15 years.
Of course, it's only going to hold the record until Bill and Ted 3 comes out.
Or Joker in October. Let's not forget that.
Joker.
But no, I'm pumped, man. This should be fun. Theater should be packed all the first probably month the damn thing is out. Should be enthusiastic audiences. Should be a lot of fun. Looking forward to it.
And it should be a damn good movie. So
let's hope.
Yeah, they'd have to really shit the bed to ruin this, and I don't think they're going to do it, quite frankly. Let's see here. Now I say that, and I might have just jinxed the movie. Who knows?
That's not a thing.
So, video game announcement.
Yeah.
Video game announcement that applies to neither of us.
No.
We don't have the technology.
But it's cool. I think this is cool.
Yes, the idea of it is great. The idea of it is almost enough to get me to invest in the technology.
Wow. That's a lot of money.
I said almost.
Yes. Anyway, go ahead.
All of you listening to this are familiar with the character of Iron Man.
Mm-hmm.
He is an Iron Man that is a rich guy named Tony Stark. Anyway, PlayStation VR, which is a virtual reality system designed to work with PlayStation, I'm assuming.
PlayStation 4, yes.
4, yes. Is producing a new Iron Man VR game that uses the platform's technology to put players inside Tony Stark's virtual armor.
This is
comes from developer Camouflage.
This is awesome.
Yes. Is this not what VR was designed for?
Yes, this is like, of all the PSVR games, which I've seen trailers for, I don't, the criticism of VR games, from what I understand, has been that they're relatively short experiences typically that aren't worth the full investment. So we'll have to wait and see, if this is really a full-length game or more of a glorified demo, the way some of them have been. But from a pure conceptual standpoint, this sounds awesome.
Yeah. You sound more excited for this than you were for Arkham VR.
Well, yeah, because Arkham VR, from the jump, they pretty much said was only going to be like a 4-hour game. We pretty much knew it was an extended demo, essentially. We don't know that about this. That could wind up being the case. But this could also wind up being a legitimate Iron Man game, that's going to have some length to it, all playing out through virtual reality. I'm watching the trailer for it right now as we talk about it, and it looks so much fun.
In a word, glorious.
Yeah, it really does look freaking cool.
Oh, man. They should do a WWE VR game where you get to play from the perspective of Nathan Jones in 2003.
Or they should do a VR version of GM mode where you play from the gorilla position.
Hell yeah. And before GM mode starts, you get to be in first-person mode as Vince takes you onto his plane to tell you that life's not fair.
No, life's not fair. Or if you're our friends, you get to come to my house in a few weeks for Avengers Endgame and watch us play the game and think to yourself, that's not fair.
Now, there's a lot of nuance that goes into that, Nick, because, I mean, you could be playing GM mode and suddenly Finley gets injured for 8 weeks, and there goes your top feud. And you might think to yourself, that's not fair.
Or you might not be paying attention to your contract links, and one of your superstars gets signed away by your competitor, and then you're thinking to yourself, that's not fair.
Or you may be put in the unenviable position of drafting Tommy Dreamer to your show, and you may think, that's not fair.
Yeah, there you go.
Anyway, that's the end of the rundown. That's all we got for it.
Long rundown.
But we have, ow, son of a bastard. I just ran over my toe with my chair. Oh, that's not fair, damn it. Oh, anyway, we're going to give you a very special extended, because I'm not even looking at the clock today, Nick. We're going to give you an extended WrestleMania week edition of the Wrestling Minute. Boy, Nick, WrestleMania 35 is coming up just around the corner. Can you believe it? It's here again.
I can't believe it. And I know we have some friends, lots of friends here at Place to Be Nation who are making the trip to the New York, New Jersey area for WrestleMania. And so we, of course, wish them well on their travels and hope everyone has an amazing time. There's truly nothing like WrestleMania. And I would encourage them all to take advantage of something I just found out about, Greg. The WrestleCon event, you're familiar with that, are you, right?
Yeah, of course.
So this year at WrestleCon, there's a very special opportunity that fans can take part in. Professional wrestler, AEW star Joey Ryan is going to be making appearances at WrestleCon this year, Greg, and for the low price of $30, you can take a photo with Joey Ryan, and in that photo, you will be allowed to, put your hand on a certain area of Mr. Ryan's body.
His lower back?
No, around on the front side.
His stomach?
No, a little lower than that.
His taint?
A little higher.
You get to touch that?
You get to touch Joey Ryan's penis, yes, for just $30.
Wow, incredible. All of our friends at Place to Be Nation should take advantage of that,
yes.
Especially our good friend John D'Amato.
Yes, should go and feel what the Joey Ryan experience is all about.
Maybe that's what it's like to truly feel the bang. But we're not here to talk about that or Hollywood scum Hogan. We're here to talk about a little DDP throwback for you there, Nick. Not a shot at your beloved Hulkster. That wouldn't be fair. No, we're here to talk about WrestleMania and TakeOver as well, I suppose. So big weekend of activities coming up, Nick. I know all our comic book fans out there are excited about this portion of the show and probably thinking to themselves, that's not fair. But nonetheless, let's talk about this card. What do we... TakeOver, I'm a little hazy on, actually. I know they've had to rearrange the card. I have no doubt it's going to be awesome. Every TakeOver is awesome. At this point, the name of the show sells itself. Johnny Gargano gets his shot to win the NXT Championship in a 2 out of 3 falls match against Adam Cole. I really think this match could go either way because I think it depends on if Johnny's getting called up or not. What are your thoughts on the TakeOver card, Nick?
Oh, I'm excited. I'm excited about it just because it's TakeOver. The card is what the card is. It underwent some changes, obviously, but their reputation is so great at this point, it's hard to doubt them. And Johnny Gargano and Adam Cole are two outstanding professional wrestlers who are being given an opportunity to go out there in a 2 out of 3 falls match. I'm very much looking forward to it.
Yes, as am I. Should be a hell of a show. Then, of course, on Sunday we get the Showcase of the Immortals. Well, actually, on Saturday we get the Hall of Fame ceremony, which, of course, the big news is Brutus the fucking Barber Beefcake going into the Hall of Fame.
Absolutely, alongside other luminaries such as Harlem Heat, such as who else we got? Greg, we got Tori Wilson. How can we forget Tori? The Hart Foundation, I know you're excited about going in.
Mm-hmm.
So just, a great Hall of Fame class this year.
Indeed so. And then, of course, Sunday is the showcase of the Immortals, the granddaddy of them all, WrestleMania. And let's just run down the card and give some predictions here, Nick, shall we?
Sure.
Women's Battle Royal. Confirmed entrants include Asuka, Carmella, Naomi, Lana, Mandy Rose, Sonya Deville, Nikki Cross, Dana Brooke, Ruby Riott, Liv Morgan, Sarah Logan, Mickie James, and Zelina Vega. We don't know if there will be any other additions the day of the show. I'm sure there will be. I will go out on a limb, and I will predict that Asuka will win this as a make-up for losing her women's title.
I will say the same thing. My exact thinking.
Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal. Confirmed entrants include Braun Strowman, Michael Che, Colin Jost, Andrade, Apollo Crews, Titus O'Neil, Tyler Breeze, Jinder Mahal, No Way Jose, Bobby Roode, Chad Gable, Lucha House Party, Bo Dallas, Curtis Axel, Heath Slater, Rhino, Victor Connor, Ali, Shelton Benjamin, Luke Gallows, Carl Anderson, Matt Hardy, Jeff Hardy, Otis, Tucker, and EC3.
I will take Michael Che in this battle royal.
And I'll take Colin Jost.
There you go.
All right. Cruiserweight Championship, Buddy Murphy versus Tony Nese in Nese's backyard. I am still going to take Buddy Murphy to retain.
I'm going to take Tony Nese.
Interesting. Very good. First diversion there. SmackDown Tag Team Championship. This is now official, apparently. The Usos versus Ricochet and Aleister Black versus The Bar versus Rusev and Shinsuke Nakamura.
I'm going to take The Bar because I don't think we know for sure that the Usos have re-signed their deal yet, which apparently expires in May.
That's a good reasoning, Nick. I got to be honest. That's a good reasoning. I will take the Usos to retain, but I agree with your thought process there. Kurt Angle versus Baron Corbin. First of all, do we think this match actually happens?
Yes, unfortunately.
Second of all, how do we see it going?
Angle. Quickly.
Angle.
Quickly, I hope.
Yep.
Please.
Yep.
Please, God.
Yes, please, for the love of God. Get him in the ring. German suplexes. Angle slam. No moonsault. Ankle lock. Go home. One of the great wrestlers of all time, by the way, Kurt Angle. So, Miz versus Shane McMahon, Falls Count Anywhere.
Miz wins.
Yeah, I'll go Miz as well. I think there's a chance they extend this out longer and Shane wins, but let's say Miz. Women's Tag Team Championship. Sasha and Bayley versus Beth and Natalya versus Nia and Tamina versus the Iconics. Mm-hmm. Sasha and Bayley retain, in my opinion.
Sasha and Bayley retain, but we all win by getting to see Peyton Royce on the grandest stage of them all.
Oh, for God's sake, King. Peyton Royce is ridiculously hot, and I'm not. And that's not fair.
That's right.
United States Championship. Samoa Joe versus Rey Mysterio.
If that even happens.
Yes.
If it happens, Joe retains.
Yes, he did get injured during his match on Monday Night Raw. But either way, if it happens, Joe retains. Now, if Mysterio is hurt, what better way to plug in John Cena, right? But
you would think that, but
we'll see.
Hard to say.
Intercontinental Championship. Bobby Lashley versus Demon Finn Balor. Balor wins this.
Balor wins, yes.
Triple H versus Batista. No holds barred. Triple H's career on the line.
Triple H wins.
Yes, pedigree.
Yes. Probably in about 12 minutes.
Although, we didn't talk about this when we were talking off the air today, Nick, but Dave Batista dropped just a magnificent promo on Raw, did he not?
It was pretty good.
I mean, that's about as good as it gets.
Mm-hmm.
AJ Styles versus Randy Orton. Really a match that could go either way. I think Orton wins.
I'm going to go AJ.
Very good. Roman Reigns versus Drew McIntyre. Reigns, I'm picking.
Yes.
Daniel Bryan versus Kofi Kingston WWE Championship. Ooh, this is another tough one that I'm wavering back and forth on.
Kofi Kingston wins.
I think Kofi Kingston wins as well. I think he has to win. We'll talk more about that if it doesn't happen, but I think he has to win. Universal Championship, Brock Lesnar defending against Seth Rollins. I think Brock retains.
I agree at this point, yes.
And then finally, Raw and SmackDown Women's Championships on the line. Ronda Rousey versus Charlotte Flair versus Becky Lynch. I think they will do the right thing here, and Becky will win and be crowned the man in WWE.
Let's certainly hope so. It would not be as egregious as not having Bryan walk out of WrestleMania 30,
No.
but it would be similar in some respects.
Yes, there's a believable argument for any of the three to win, but Becky is the one that should win.
Should win, yes.
Yeah. So, all that being said, let's move on from that and wrap things up. Now, what's coming up the rest of Shazam month, you might be asking yourself, or probably you've already quit from all of our inside jokes. But if you're still around, next week we will have our exclusive review of the Shazam movie right here on the podcast. Very much looking forward to that. It's getting a lot of rave reviews. And then the next week, we will come back and do I believe another Longbook Hunt, or is that at the end of the month?
We can really kind of be interchangeable with that. It's kind of up to you. Not to tell tales out of school, but we're up in the air. We are going to do another Longbook this month. We just don't know what we're going to do.
Which we're going to do, yeah. We're going back and forth between two Shazam books, one of which is The Power of Shazam by Jerry Ordway, graphic novel from the 90s, and one of which is the Jeff Johns Shazam New 52 reboot. Mm-hmm. And both of them have good arguments to get in our rotation here, so we'll have to talk that amongst ourselves and figure that out. And then we're going to close out the month with being joined by the manager, Todd Weber, to discuss the 1970s Shazam TV show, which is now available in HD remastered. Nick, I noticed that last night when I was on the app. On the DC Universe app. So we'll have a chance to watch this show for the very first time, at least for me, the very first time. Nick, I don't know if you've ever watched it.
No, I've never seen any of it. I didn't even know it existed really until a few months ago. So, looking forward to that, of course.
Yeah, so got a lot coming your way, and with all that being said, Nick, I guess that's about it for our show.
Well, it is, but we're going to continue our tradition as we have every month. Of having Jim Ross sing us out the door. Excuse me, let me rephrase. WWE Hall of Famer Jim Ross. And earlier, Greg, when we were talking about the events of WrestleMania weekend, one thing we didn't mention during our discussion of the Hall of Fame was, of course, the headlining act that's going into the Hall of Fame this year. That would be legendary and iconic WWF/WWE stable tag team group, Degeneration X. Now, they're going into the Hall of Fame, so I thought, what better way to honor them as this year's headlining act than to have their soon-to-be fellow Hall of Famer do a little rendition of their theme song. So, JR, I know you're a big fan of DX. Why don't you take it away there?
Whoever it was that signed Degeneration X to all their contracts in WWE must have been a pretty smart guy, don't you think, Nick?
I would have to say so, yeah.
Pretty fair guy. Pretty decent mind for this business.
Mm-hmm. What about those members of DX who were signed prior to certain individuals' tenure as head of talent relations?
Well, they were fine. They're fine talents, but certainly a certain individual had to re-sign them to longer-term deals. Wouldn't you agree with that?
I don't know. I don't know what the terms of the contracts were at the time.
Well, just go along with it, you son of a bitch. So. Now, I got one question for you now, Nick. Are you ready? Are you ready? It is a simple question. I am not trying to get anybody. I'm not trying to say gotcha. I am not trying to get headlines on the internet, clickbait on one of my dirt sheets. I'm just asking a simple question. Are you ready? So, you think you can tell us what to do? You think you can tell old JR what to wear? You think you're better? I bet you do. I can see it in your face you think you're better. But you're right. I'm not saying it's bad. Listen, Nothing that I'm saying, none of these questions should be misconstrued to suggest that I'm saying that you're a bad man for what you're doing. You're not bad. You're just asking, you have an opinion about yourself. You have the confidence that top stars in this industry need to have. Austin had it, Rock had it, Hogan had it, Flair had it. You gotta have it. You gotta have confidence in yourself. Anyway, that being said, you better get ready to bow to the masters. Break it down. Now, that's right, break it down. Degenerate into something, Fuel. We just got tired of doing what y'all told us to do. Sorry, I had a little moment there. That's the Brakes boy, yeah. That is the Brakes little man. You know, this was a little man, Kevin Sullivan, the Taskmaster. A little man that could capture the hearts of an audience. Break it down. Degeneration X, for God's sake. Degeneration X. You think you can tell me what to do? You think you know who you're talking to? Well, you better get used to the way the damn ball bounces. When you've got that hashtag OUDNA, the ball bounces good for you. I've seen what you got. It measures in ounces. But that's the Brakes, boy, and that ain't fair. That's the Brakes, little man, and that ain't fair. Break it down. Degeneration X. Degeneration X. Austin, you think you're a big man? Well, the big man is back. I'll treat you like a little man, like Kevin Sullivan. Yo, tell me what it's like to be half a man. Tell me what it's like to lose a testicle. It must break your heart to see what I am. But that's the Brakes, boy, yeah. Life's not fair, little man. Break it down. Degeneration X. Quite frankly, Degeneration X. You think you can tell me what to do? Do you know who the hell you're talking to? Just stop. You want to be something else? You want to be someone else? Put it away. Put it back in your pants. Like a book on a shelf that you can't read, boy. Yeah. Then you can read. You can't read even, little man. Break it down.
Hard-Traveling Fanboys, 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 Hard-Traveling Fanboys.